What's up, y'all? You're watching Union Minded. I'm your host, Eric, and today we are going to talk about the NLRA, the National Labor Relations Act, the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, Trader Joe's, Elon Musk, the wealthy, how they're all related, and why we are where we are. But before we dive into all of that, like, subscribe, notification bell, comment, share the video. Let's grow this community and help change the world together. Now, let's dive in. So, for you who don't know, and I'm going to assume that most of you don't because you're not taught this in school, but the National Labor Relations Act was passed in 1935. It is a law that came about because bosses were so bad and trying to maximize so much profit from their workers and created conditions that were so unsavory and unsafe and paid so little that workers began to refuse to work for them and went on strike regularly. You see, bosses have never been kind to workers in the history of this country. It's the only history that I'm really that familiar with, as it's the country that I was born in. It's the country that I read up about. It's the one that I'm worried about the future of, and so I'm more educated on this stuff than anything else. Now, in the early days, we all know slavery, right? That was bosses getting work done for free, maximizing profits. At the same time that was going on, industry in the North was beginning to start developing, and bosses were being abusive to the workers there and causing unsafe conditions that would lead to the death of their workers at a very high rate. Bosses in the North were forcing children to work as well, just like bosses in the South were forcing slaves to work for them for nothing. So the bosses were never good. And the common folk, after so many years of abuse, began to realize that collectively they had power. And so collectively they would decide to walk off of a job. Collectively they would decide to boycott companies. And that began to disturb commerce. And what is commerce? Commerce is the flow of money. Commerce is capitalism. It was disturbing capitalism. And what was most alarming by 1935 was that the public was beginning to side with the workers. And had this continued, this unrest and strife, capitalism may have fell to something different. Don't know what that would have been. So that's the purpose that the NLRA was created for. And if you don't believe me, let's read straight from the NLRA. It is declared to be the policy of the United States to eliminate the causes of certain substantial obstructions to the free flow of commerce and to mitigate and eliminate these obstructions when they have occurred by encouraging the practice and procedure of collective bargaining and by protecting the exercise by workers of full freedom of association, self-organization, and designation of representatives of their own choosing, for the purpose of negotiating the terms and conditions of their employment or other mutual aid or protection. That is straight from the act itself in its description of its purpose. We can read further and you will find that experience, this is straight from the act, experience has proved that protection by law of the right of employees to organize and bargain collectively safeguards commerce from injury, impairment, or interruption, and promotes the flow of commerce by removing certain recognized sources of industrial strife and unrest. So you understand the NLRA was a law written to create a referee between the bosses and the workers because the workers were disrupting capitalism and the public was beginning to side with the workers more than the bosses. So the NLRA was necessary. So now you know a little bit about the NLRA. And the NLRA protects workers' rights to form unions, bargain collectively for working conditions and pay. So what's the NLRB? Well, that is the agency that is designated with the task of refereeing the enforcement of the NLRA between businesses and workers. Are you following me so far? I know you are. You guys are sharp as a tack. Now, why are we talking about Trader Joe? Well, let's talk about it. This is from a Huffington Post article from January 26th. I will drop it in the description box for you to read. Trader Joe's attorney argues the National Labor Relations Board is unconstitutional. Trader Joe's is facing a litany of union-busting charges before the National Labor Relations Board. The agency prosecutors have accused the company of illegally retaliating against workers, firing a union supporter, and spreading false information in an effort to chill an organizing campaign. But in a hearing last Tuesday, the grocer's attorney briefly summarized the sweeping defense it intends to mount against the charges. The labor board itself, which was created during the New Deal and has refereed private sector collective bargaining for nearly 90 years, is unconstitutional. The argument would appear to fit inside a broader conservative effort to dismantle the regulatory state, which has taken aim at agencies tasked with enforcing laws to protect workers, consumers, and the environment. The exchange, a transcript of which Huffington Post obtained through a public records request, came at the start of a trial to determine whether Trader Joe's violated workers' rights. Trader Joe's attorney, Christopher Murphy, of the law firm Morgan & Lewis, informed the judge, Charles Mull, that there was one final thing the grocery chain wanted to add to its defense before proceedings began. And then in quotes it says, "The National Labor Relations Act is as interpreted and or applied in this matter, including but not limited to the structure and organization of the National Labor Relations Board and the agency's administrative law judges, is unconstitutional," Murphy said. Murphy added that the company was making the affirmative defense so that it could argue it in full later. The company's defense was first reported by Bloomberg. Rich people have no need to study history, but they would be wise to not try to dismantle the NLRB, and I'll tell you why. Workers don't need the NLRB. Businesses do, you dummies, you dodo birds. If you get rid of the NLRB, workers will have nowhere to turn to have a referee judge the problems between workers and business. What do you think that does for you, you nerd? Workers outnumber business owners by millions to one, hundreds of thousands to one. It's a very large number that constitutes the 99% of society, you dummies. So if you get rid of the referee, what do you think is going to happen? We've already done this. We started out without a referee. And in the early days, it was pitchforks and torches burning down houses of owners. Then it moved along to unions and it became bloody battles. Look up the Haymarket Affair. Look up the Ludlow Massacre. Look up the Pullman Company Town and their strikes. This is documented history. It's labor history. It's already happened. So go ahead and attack the NLRB. Go ahead and get rid of your last line of protection, because workers are still going to get fed up. And who's going to stand in the way when there isn't a referee to turn to say, hey, they're cheating? You think this ends up well for the 1%? Or do you think it ends up well for the 99%? Dummies. My name's Eric. You're watching Union Minded. Remember that the fight's not left and right. It's up and down. It's going to take solidarity to win always. Each one teach one. Get out there and reach one. And remember, there could be no union without you and I front and center. Let's go.